My marriage was a real mistake. In fact, it was the worst mistake of my life. The main problem wasn't my wife, she was okay in many ways. My problem was her mother, a real dragon who hated me more than anything else and never missed an opportunity to be nasty to me. Of course, I wasn't a genuine good guy, far from it. But I wasn't a really bad guy either. Every human being has both good and bad sides. Nobody is perfect. I had never pretended to be a saint and, to tell you the truth, I have been involved in a few less than honorable matters, but I've never spent time in jail for anything. It was a very close call once, but my friend Niklas, who went to law school at the time, saved me. Niklas and I have been friends since school. He is a small guy with thick glasses, and he always preferred reading books rather than joining the rest of us in teasing the girls. When a couple of the boys in school chose him to be the victim of their mobbing, I felt sorry for him and told everybody that I would beat the crap out of anyone who dared to offend Niklas. 2 of the boys did, and I kept my word. Today, as I begin writing this story, I am 32 years old, self-employed rock driller, which means I'm drilling holes about 100 meters deep for thermal heating tubes, and I'm making good money doing it. I've been married to Lizette for almost 6 years, and we have a son, who was born only 5 months after our wedding. We have a nice house and we could be your average family. But we are not because of her mother, the dragon, who hates me so much for getting her daughter pregnant while she had a boyfriend chosen by her mother. I must say that I've lost many battles, but I hope to be the winner in the last round. The whole mess began on Midsummer Eve some 6 years ago. The Midsummer Night is the shortest night of the year, and has been celebrated as a holy night here in Scandinavia since ancient times when the Vikings ruled this land. It is a romantic night with midnight sun in the north and only a few hours of mild twilight in the south. Wild partying everywhere. At the time I was engaged to a lovely girl by the name of Lottie, and we were planning to move in together on the 1st of August, when I had been promised a 3-room apartment in exchange for the 2 rooms I currently had. But now Lottie and I had been arguing about her going to a cousin's wedding on Midsummer Eve. I wasn't invited together with her, which was a serious breach of etiquette, because engaged couples are regarded as equal to married ones, and should always be invited together. I was sure that no other engaged people were invited as singles. Lottie also understood that it was a humiliation of me due to my old reputation as a bad boy. I had never done anything wrong neither to my girlfriend nor to her cousin, whom I had never even met. Lottie agreed that I was right, but she refused to choose me for that great evening, and would not stay home from the wedding. If the damn wedding had been any other weekend, I would have been glad to stay away, and even if I had been invited, I'd have done my best to find an excuse for not going. I didn't blame the cousin, it was up to her to choose her guests and skip people she didn't like. I blamed Lottie for accepting such a humiliating invitation on Midsummer, the most important day of the year. We got into arguing, and when she left my apartment in anger in the morning of Midsummer Eve, our engagement was terminated. I told her that if her damn cousin was more important than her boyfriend, then she could stay there forever, because I didn't want her back. An hour later I regretted losing her and called her cell phone several times during the day, but it was switched off. Lottie and I were also invited to a big party at a friend's cottage. I went there alone and I had a good time as a new single. At the party I danced several times with a rather nice girl, Lizette, who was there with her wimpy fiancé, who had problems handling the booze. I didn't know her very well at that time, but found her rather attractive. When her boyfriend had had too much to drink, I offered to help her dump him in the back seat of his car. Lizette and I went back to the party for a while, and then took a walk in the romantic twilight to a nearby lake. We went out on the small pier, sat down and began heavy necking. I think she was impressed with my old and incorrect reputation as a bad boy. Nobody can explain why, usually, pretty women are attracted to bad boys. Obviously, it has always been this way, because there is an old saying, it is the naughty boys that sleep with the beautiful girls. I succeeded in convincing her that she was the prettiest girl I had ever met, and she had every right in the world to love, and to be loved by, a real man during such a holy night as the midsummer. This was exactly how I felt at that very moment. Neither of us was very drunk, and afterwards she never accused me of using any tricks to get her on her back. She was simply in love with me, and had no objections as we went to the guest room, which was booked by her and her boyfriend for the night. After a while, it was she who asked me to make real love to her. Then we fell asleep, and didn't wake up until the next morning, when her boyfriend was yelling like a lunatic when he found Lizette and me naked in bed. Lizette's boyfriend threw his engagement ring at her, which obviously meant he dumped her at once. When my own, now ex-girlfriend Lottie came back from the wedding, she rang me and told me she regretted the whole trip, and I had been right about her being the only guest invited without his or her significant other, which had made her very humiliated and spoiled the whole wedding for her. She had tried to call me several times during Midsummer Eve to ask me to forgive her, which I could see later on when I checked the incoming messages on my cell phone. She begged me to see her and talk about our situation, which I agreed to do. But then, when she called me again an hour later after she had found out about me with Lizette, she was totally mad and shouted that she was glad our engagement was history. I didn't care at first, but called her several times about 2 weeks later when I expected her to have calmed down. I received the same reply every time, and was suggested to take a hike to a hot place. I even called Lizette a few times, but she refused to see me, and I had almost forgotten all about her when she rang my doorbell 2 months later. She had a worried expression on her face, and wanted to talk to me. I asked her to come in. She went straight down to business. "I'm pregnant, and you are the father." Then she started crying. We talked for several hours, and she told me that I was the first, and only, man who ever had had it with her. She intended to keep the baby, and asked me if I was man enough to share the consequences of what we did. What could I say? Even I understood that 2 parents were the best for a child, and agreed to give our relation a fair try. Lizette was a handsome, pretty and mild-mannered girl with a reputation as a family girl. Not as cute as Lottie, but not a bad choice for a wife. We decided to get married as soon as possible. Of course, love is an important part of a marriage, and neither of us could deny that there was some kind of hot love during our holy night. Both of us believed that it would grow between us again when we had a baby. Lizette spent the night with me and we made love. She told me that she was very happy. I had made my decision, and it was my intention to do the best of it. The next day we went together to her parents to give them the news. It was both the first and the last time I visited her parents' home. Her mother made my visit into a real hullabaloo. Instead of trying to make the best of the circumstances, she started yelling at me, calling me a damn hooligan. She threatened to sue me, and promised to punish me in every way possible. Her father was obviously a poor wimp who let the dragon spit her fire, without saying a word about the matter. Not the best in-laws in town. Her parents were the second generation of owners of the family's print shop with her mother as the feared boss. At one time, their business had been the leading printer in the whole region, but was now going downhill. The European Union, with, at the time, 15 countries, as a domestic market meant hard competition with a lot of new printing capacity available for low prices for the most important customers. And new countries, such as Poland and Hungary, with good printing capacity were close to getting their membership in the EU, and were therefore already successfully doing business with the old members. Lizette's family had made good profits during the good old times, but had not invested much in the latest equipment and was losing customers, which had gotten them into red figures. I was unemployed at that time, and Lizette's mother saw her chance to get me under her control, and demanded I begin working at the print shop for a lousy pay. I refused, and preferred to live on my unemployment insurance, which gave me more money than what she offered. As I had unlimited spare time, I even did some well-paid extra work for a rock driller. Lizette's mother began our vendetta by complaining to the unemployment benefit funds that I had refused to accept an offered job, which was against the rules. She had nothing for that. Then she had a lawyer write a premarital settlement in which I had no rights to anything if things got bad between Lizette and me, which was her mother's goal. I had Niklas rewrite it to be more fair, and Lizette signed without mentioning this to her mother. 2 months later, Lizette and I were married at the town hall. It was a simple ceremony with only 2 witnesses, Niklas and Lizette's best friend. 5 months later we had a nice baby boy. Our relationship had slowly grown into something which could be regarded as real love, and the next 2.5 years were the happiest, very happy indeed, of our marriage. A few months after our marriage I got the opportunity to buy the rock drilling business on fair terms. The owner had joined a beginner's course in square dancing and met a lovely woman there. She was a doctor with only a temporary job at the local hospital, and when she was offered a very well-paid job she proposed to the driller, who said yes and sold his business to me. As both the doctor and the driller signed a personal guarantee for me, I had no problems getting the bank to loan me the necessary money. Then, when our boy was 2.5 years old and we got him into daycare, the problems began to appear. Lizette started working at the print shop again, and as she was expected to be the next owner and boss, her nasty mother's influence grew. During the good times, Lizette's greedy mother had bought stocks for a large amount and trusted her broker because her stocks had increased during the time when almost everything went up. But then, when times got harder, her broker did a lousy job, which caused her heavy losses before she managed to stop it. At the same time, I received some inside information from Niklas, who was now a lawyer, about an unexpected big boom in a company, bought stocks and made great profit on that opportunity. I could not resist the temptation to punish Lizette's mother, which was why I bragged to Lisette that thanks to a new computer analysis program, I had done a really great profit, and there was more to come. I told her to go out to our garage for a surprise. It was an almost new Toyota I had bought at a bargain price for Lisette to use as her shopping car. Of course, she told her mother, who envied me and told Lisette to find out about my next purchase. I asked Niklas to find some real junk stocks, and made a very complex-looking nonsense program in Excel, which showed a very good expected profit for Mega X stocks. I'm sure Lisette had been into my laptop and told her mother, who then made a big investment just before the junk stocks began to sink like a stone. One evening Lisette asked me, "Have you lost any money on Mega X stocks?" "No, I bought some when they were low and sold out everything when they were on top." "Good for us." "Why do you ask?" "I've heard rumors that some people have lost a lot of money on them. Gambling on the stock market is always a risky business." I had won an important battle against her mother, but she suspected my bad advice were made on purpose, and therefore there was a rumor in town that she intended to increase her efforts to cause problems for me. Not much to worry about, because she had done her best the whole time. She made a bet to her friends that she was going to persuade her daughter to get me divorced and stripped of my belongings before our boy began school. Therefore, she always invited single, young sons of their business friends and acquaintances to her parties, hoping that one of them would seduce Lisette. Many of them were well-educated, well-mannered. Of course sooner or later, one of them would get her. She had a boyfriend when I did, and why should she be different now? Especially after a long time brainwashing to dump me from her mother. Her mother probably still thought Lisette would get the most of my belongings to invest in the print shop when I dumped her after getting more humiliation than I could take. Hate, revenge, and money were strong reasons for her mother's dirty game against me. I told Lisette that I knew about the bet, and if her mother succeeded in finding a guy who will get her, she would be thrown out immediately. Lisette got mad and shouted, "What the hell do you think of me? Don't you think I know about that damn bet and would get mad as hell if anybody tried anything? Good decision. Keep it, and we won't have any reasons to further talk about that matter." When Lisette started working full-time, our family life began to slowly sink down to new lows. I wanted us to have another child, but Lisette refused. Our life, which had been on a good, sometimes on a very good, level while she stayed at home with the kid, became only routine. At first, I didn't complain much, because Lisette worked hard to get the printing business to survive, which her mother, with her old-time manners, could not stop from losing customers. My business flowered so well that I suggested Lisette to come work for me instead of her mother, which she refused. With increasing prices for oil, a thermal heating system was a very good investment, which meant very good business for me. Though I had much to do, I did my best to help Lisette as much as possible at home. Our marriage wasn't on top, but it was still on acceptable levels for a long time during the years after she went back to work. We still had our good moments now and then. I really did my best in my efforts to persuade her to quit her now very lousy paid job and be free of her mother's bad influence. But things went in the opposite direction. Lisette began to take the kid with her, and spent more weekends at her parents' summer house than at home. After a while, I had had enough, and we had our first real fight. She understood that her mother had pushed her too far and agreed to spend more time at home. But it was an empty, soon forgotten, promise. Only 3 months after our serious quarrel, she was back to her bad habit again, which also meant that our social life with our friends decreased to a minimum. Of course, I wasn't more stupid than that I understood that her mother now, after several years of fruitless attempts, had finally succeeded in getting us to drift apart. Our son had told me about some Tommy kissing mom when they came home after the last weekend at her mother's place. This was not a surprise, such things were expected to happen sooner or later, and now I knew for sure that the shit had hit the fan. I realized that our marriage was close to being history, despite all my efforts to be a good husband. Of course I was saddened by my failure, but to my great surprise, a feeling of great relief began to grow stronger. I could look forward to a future without a nasty mother-in-law doing her best to mess up my life. During the last years, Lisette had always, to my increasing disappointment, chosen to be on her mother's side, so I didn't care if she chose her mother in her final decision too. However, I thought it was my duty to give her a last, fair chance to be a good wife again, and save the marriage if she was interested in doing that. She got her chance the following Friday. In the evening, Lisette, as usual, told me that she was sorry but she had to go to see her mother on Saturday morning, and would be back sometime on Sunday, which probably meant in the evening. I decided that it was now high time to let her make the final choice. To be honest, I didn't care very much what she did any longer, but I felt sorry for our son and decided to suggest her to change her plans for the weekend, and save our marriage, so I replied, "Please don't go. You were there the last weekend. Why can't you stay at home so our family can do something together? We could invite some friends and have a barbecue. It's been a long time since we did something like that. She looked surprised and replied, I've promised Mother to be there and help her with her visiting friends. Her visiting friends? Why are they so much more important to you than our own friends? Or do you mean one special male friend? Who is this damn Tommy who seems to spend the weekends with you? Will he be there? She got a surprised and scared look in her eyes for a second when I mentioned Tommy. Then she replied, he is an old friend of our family's and helps Mother, and sometimes me too, to understand some EU rules. He is not my friend, so I don't know if Mother have invited him. How old is he? I think he is 30. And a good-looking single guy, I presume. No, he is married but his wife is on a 3-month temporary job for the United Nations. That's why he is free to help Mother on weekends. Her explanation about the help with complicated rules in the European Union sounded reasonable, but why would a man of that age want to spend the weekends with such a greedy old dragon? And what is your relation with this Tommy? You seem to prefer to spend weekends with him rather than with your husband. Once again I noted a split second of fear in her eyes before she replied, strictly business, of course. What the hell do you think of me? I don't know any longer. You cheated on your boyfriend when you and I met. Who says you won't cheat again? Don't insult me. That was different. I was young and fell in love with you and you ought to know that I still love you. You say so, but let's make it clear where we stand today. Nowadays, you've got very strange ways of showing what you call love. Not much to brag about, indeed. Our marriage is a travesty of a real marriage, our so-called personal life is almost non-existent. You prefer to abandon your husband and spend your weekends with this Tommy boy, who obviously is starving for some when his wife is away. But you, Lizette, is a very handsome young woman and it can't be totally wrong to presume that it is you which is his first, probably only goal and reason to be at your damn summer house. However, you keep saying that you love me, but I can't understand how the hell you can think that I would believe such mumbo-jumbo after what you are doing to me. I'm totally fed up with your damn mother and her nasty tricks on our family, and ready to offer you fair terms for a divorce so you'll be free to do what you want with your dear Tommy boy. She had not expected any suggestion of divorce and her face took on an ash-gray color when she shouted, Divorce? Are you serious? You can't demand divorce because I want to see my mother. Are you mad? That is no reason for divorce. No it isn't, but I can't see any serious reason for you to see her from morning to evening 7 days a week, every week. If your own family still means something to you, please skip Tommy and stay home this weekend so we can talk about our problems and try to find a solution before it is too late. Please do that if you still love me as you are saying. Of course I love you, but I've promised Mother to go and I have to go. I'm sorry that I can't stay with you but please be patient with me and I promise you'll be well rewarded. Have you forgotten that next Friday is Midsummer Eve and we'll be together the whole day? And we'll spend a whole week together 24-hour a day at a summer house in July. What a mark of favor. At the end of next month I'll get a whole week together with my lovely, beloved wife. What a gift from heaven. And may I guess that your favors to me on Midsummer Eve are caused by such circumstances as Tommy being somewhere else during the holidays? Maybe he is going to be together with his wife during the holiday and won't have time for you? Poor you. Or do you still remember that I dumped Lottie because she abandoned me on a Midsummer Eve? Now she sobbed, You are not funny. You are pathetic. Do you think it is funny to be married to you? I must say that you have a strange way of showing your love. Okay, Lizette, I know I can't stop you from going to see that guy because he is more important to you than your family, but you have to take the kid with you, because I'm going to do service on the drilling equipment tomorrow, and can't take care of him at the same time. Now she was really mad and shouted, You are accusing me of cheating, treating me as a.s. Mother is right, you are a real bastard. Then she began crying loudly. I put a full stop at this point and understood that there was something going on between her and that Tommy, but didn't give a shit about it anymore. Not much was left of our marriage, probably nothing at all. However, I had made one last attempt at saving it. The only reason I hadn't dumped her at once and told her that she should stay away from our home forever, was that I would get much better terms for the divorce if I caught her cheating. I couldn't see any reasons for further arguing with Lizette, and felt that it would be an advantage to stay away from home for an hour or two. I felt I needed a large whiskey and as I never liked drinking alone, I went to my favorite pub which had to be one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. After a dram at the bar, I noted that Mona, a friend of my ex-girlfriend Lottie's, was sitting in a booth with her husband. I went over to them and asked her if she knew how life was going for Lottie nowadays. She replied, Didn't you know she is back in town? She's been divorced from Sven and bought a small house here, and moved in about 2 weeks ago. She's been asking questions about you. Why don't you call her and talk directly to her instead of through me? Mona gave me Lottie's phone number and I decided to call her at once. Of course, she might ask me to take a hike and stay where I got. But, I thought, who dares wins. So I called her and she answered, Lottie. Hi, I'm Michael, an old ex-boyfriend if you remember me? Mona told me you're back in town and I just wanted to say welcome back. Now was the critical moment. How would she take my call? To my great pleasure she sounded glad to hear from me, and we had a long and pleasant talk. She even accepted my invitation to lunch on Saturday. Afterwards, I was in a good mood, and spent the rest of the evening with Mona and her husband. To my great relief, Lizette pretended to be sleeping when I got home and I slept when she left for her mother's on Saturday morning. I did some service on my drilling equipment in the morning, and at 1 o'clock I stood waiting for Lottie outside the restaurant I had suggested for our lunch. I can't deny that I had almost the same feelings I had on my first date with her almost 8 years ago. When I had waited 15 minutes and still no Lottie, I began to doubt if she would come at all. But then she came. She was still a very handsome woman, and now even in some way more ladylike than when I saw her several years ago. She had her little daughter Jennifer with her. When she gave me a hug, I immediately got a strong desire for her. She noted it and was almost frightened, but calmed down when I didn't do any further attempts to be anything other than a friend. We had a very pleasant lunch, and decided to take a walk in the nearby park afterwards. During the walk she suddenly asked me, what was your real reason for wanting to see me again? Faith, hope and charity. She got a confused expression on her face before she asked me, is it okay for you if I tell you something I have wanted to say for many years? I said, okay, go on. She told me, I've done 3 big mistakes in my life. Going to that damn wedding was my first big mistake. You were right, I was humiliated as hell when the hosts tried to get me and the groom's asshole brother do things together all the time. When the groom asked me if I had feelings for his brother I got mad and asked him to go to hell and take his brother with him. Then I left the party. I didn't invite them to Sven's and mine wedding, which made them very mad. I thought you would forgive me and take me back when I came home. But then Lizette's boyfriend called and told me you had taken Lizette which she had saved for their wedding night. I was still in love with you, and got mad and made my second big mistake when I refused to talk to you when you phoned me. I got together with Sven only to punish you, and intended to dump him and take you back. But then Lizette had gotten pregnant and that made a mess of everything. I admired you for taking care of her, but cried many nights for being so stupid that I lost you. Then I married Sven, which was my third big mistake. If I hadn't been such a stupid idiot, you and I could have been married instead. I replied, I did a serious mistake too when I seduced Lizette that midsummer eve. Of course, you and I had split up so I was free to do what I wanted, but I ought to have used my common sense and tried to get you back before I went further. Believe me, I have really regretted it many times. But it is never too late to give it a try again, or is it? She was completely surprised. What did you say? Lizette and I have problems, serious problems indeed. I know she is cheating on me, but I don't have any evidence yet. Yesterday evening, before I went to the pub and met Mona, I asked her to stay home this weekend instead of going to see her mother and her lover, but she chose to go. I decided that we are finito. I'm going to divorce her as soon as I get the evidence I need, or, if I don't succeed in getting it, I'll go for it within a month anyway. Oh my God. I thought you two were happy. We have been very happy. You know the old saying, if you don't get the girl you love, love the girl you get? It worked well for us. After a while I loved her very much. Real true love indeed, but it is over now. How about you? Are you dating somebody? She looked me straight in the eye and said, yes, I've met a handsome man on the net but we haven't met in real life yet. We'll have our first date as a lunch tomorrow. So I'm too late to get a date? However, I would like to apply for being some kind of substitute for that lucky guy. Just in case he isn't your dream prince. What do you say? She kept her eyes on mine and remained silent for a few seconds before she replied, isn't this date a real date for you? I could only reply, seeing you today is the best thing I've done for a long time, but I'm selfish enough to want to see more of you, perhaps even as something more than a friend. She shook her head, no, I don't think it is a good solution to have you as some kind of substitute, not at all. Then when she noted the big disappointment in my eyes she continued, you are my first choice, and if you are serious and promise to be honest with me, I won't need any substitutes, and I'll cancel my date. It is my lucky day today. Please remember that I never cheated on you when we were engaged. You had dumped me and I was single when I met Lizette. I will not cheat on her before we are parting. But you and I have kids of almost the same age and we can begin as friends. That is, if you want to. I have rented a nice summer house by the coast for the 3rd week of July and I can promise you that Lizette and I have gone our separate ways before then. Lottie invited me to dinner at her home during the evening and we began to make some plans for the next weeks. Jennifer and I were already good friends and she had no bad feelings because of her mother having a boyfriend. I spent the night in Lottie's spare room and we made a trip to the coast on Sunday. Lizette came home late Sunday evening and we didn't say much before we went to sleep. The next week was also quiet between us. Obviously, she was in a very bad mood after I had suggested divorce. Neither of us made any attempts to initiate you-know-what. The next Friday was Midsummer Eve. Lottie and Jennifer spent it with Lottie's parents. Lizette and I were invited to spend the evening at a neighbor's house, where several families with children of different ages were gathered. Most of the afternoon was spent playing with the children. Then, in the evening, we adults had some funny games and danced, but I hardly spoke with Lizette and didn't dance a single dance with her. She usually pretended to be a good, loving wife when we were out, but now neither she nor I cared that everybody could see the chilly feelings between us. On Midsummer Day she went to see her mother but didn't stay overnight, maybe because Tommy wasn't there. Lottie had invited me to her parents' home and I spent a few hours there. They wished Lottie and me good luck in our new relation. The week after Midsummer came and went with chilly feelings between Lizette and me. We were polite and correct to each others, but neither of us showed the slightest trace of love. Of course, it was out of the question. Lizette expected to get it from Tommy and I was looking forward to get all I wanted from Lottie. The following weekend Lizette and our son went with her parents on a 3-day coach tour to Legoland, a famous amusement park for children, and thereafter she was going to her annual 2-day visit to her cousin. I was happy to get 4 nights at Lottie's house. Of course, both Lottie and I wanted to have it, but just in case Lizette intended to fight the divorce, it would be an advantage to have been the faithful party, and therefore we agreed to wait. Lottie, her girl, and I had a pleasant time together while Lizette was away. Lottie and I found out that we still liked each other's company very much. Real love indeed. Both Lizette and I were usually very busy at our jobs during the summer and therefore we had decided to have only 2 holiday weeks each and only one, the last of them, together in the summer house I had rented at the coast. Instead of the usual summer holidays we intended go to Thailand for 2 weeks in November. These plans were made before Tommy jumped into her life, but under present circumstances I no longer had any intentions of going anywhere with Lizette. Instead, I had promised Lottie to dump Lizette before that week and she had agreed to spend it in the summer house with me and I intended to keep my promise. I think Lizette finally understood that she had caused much more serious problems in our marriage than she had intended to, and began her attempts at pretending to be a good wife again. To my great surprise she called me all 4 evenings she was away, and told me how much she missed me. She had never called me before during all those weekends she spent at her parents' place. Each time she called me, I wanted to talk to my son. During their second day at the Legoland trip I asked him several short, simple questions, all of which he answered yes. One of those questions was, "Is Tommy with you?" And the answer was yes. I don't think any of the adults noticed that. My guess at the reason for her calls was that she had a bad conscience about taking Tommy with her, and when they got back home, I got further evidence from my boy when they made a one-night stop at home between their 2 trips. He asked me if it was true that nasty wolves could come into our house and eat him. I asked him, "Who told you a such nasty story?" "Grandma." "Why did Grandma tell you such a nasty lie? What had you done to her?" "Nothing yet, but we have a secret and if I tell you about it, the wolves would come and eat me." I tried a trick and told him, "What secret?" "That Tommy was with you and Mom is not any real secret. Your mom told me that she and Tommy shared one room and you and Grandma slept in the another room." "You knew my secret." "Yes I did, but a secret is a secret. There are no wolves, of course there isn't. But promise me not to tell Mom that we have been talking about your secret." Lizette had let the damn dragon threaten my boy. She had to pay for it. My next step was to call Niklas and tell him about my problems and cancel my visit. Then I spoke with Lottie and my friend Dan who agreed to help me. A married woman in her marital bed is usually an extra kick, giving him a feeling of being superior to the CUC husband. I expected that Tommy could not resist the temptation of such great pleasure when I was away on my holiday trip, and therefore I had bugged our bedroom with an expensive small wireless TV camera with a receiver connected to a video with extra long playing tape hidden in the garage. The camera was connected to a motion sensor and would work even in almost complete darkness. I had tested it several times with good results, so it was ready. In my drilling company's Nissan King cab I stored new locks to the house, and cardboard boxes to pack Lizette's clothes and belongings in when it was time for her to move out of my house. After 2 painful days at home, with Lizette now pretending to be a caring wife, I packed clothes for me and our boy for a holiday week, and on Saturday morning we left as planned. Lizette told me she was very sorry that she had to stay at home and work that week and she would miss us very much. I avoided kissing her goodbye but promised to call her at least once a day. She even stood on the driveway waving at us when we left. I felt sorry because the woman I have loved so much had turned into such a falsess. But instead of driving to Nikla's summer house, I went to Lottie's garage where I hid my car. Niklas and his wife were informed of my problems and had agreed to pretend that I was there but out at the moment if Lisette called them. At 6 o'clock in the evening, Lottie took a drive past my house but didn't see anything unusual there. She took a new tour at 8 o'clock and when she got back, she told me that this time she had seen a silver metallic Volvo XC90 in my driveway. It is common for people to visit friends and relatives during the summer, so no neighbor would care about a strange car on somebody's driveway during that time. I took a tour in Lottie's car at 11 and the Volvo was still there. At 1 o'clock I went there on Lottie's bicycle, sneaked into my garage and switched the monitor on. Bingo, exactly what I wanted to see. A naked Lisette and a naked man coming out of the bathroom, obviously after a shower together. Now that I knew I had all the evidence I needed for a divorce on my terms, I began to feel slightly better in this mad situation. Lisette was not stupid, far from it. Therefore, I was a bit surprised about how clumsy she had been with her cheating. It was just as if she wanted to get caught, and made it easy for me to catch her. First taking Tommy with her on the holiday trip, and then letting her nasty mother threaten our son with wolves. Who knows, maybe she wanted to be dumped so Tommy had to take care of her. However, I had to wait until they were sleeping before I could go on with my plan and watch them on the monitor. They lay down naked on the bed and Lisette told him, "Let's get some sleep so we are in good shape for a grand finale goodbye of our love story tomorrow morning." He replied, "I'll miss you so much that every weekend without you will be a terrible pain. Even when my wife is at home. Why can't we see each other at least once a month in the future? Because my marriage is in a much worse crisis than I had ever expected. Michael is still so mad about my weekends with you that he didn't even bother to kiss me goodbye when he left for a week. I made a terrible mistake by not staying at home that damn weekend when he begged me to do that. My marriage has been in a total mess since then. You are a great lover, but I want to have a good life with my husband again." Too late for that, damn S, I told myself before Tommy replied. "No need to regret anything that weekend. I gave you a good time and you must agree that once a month in the future would give us something to look forward to." Now she sounded a bit irritated and no doubt she had started to feel some remorse when she replied, "No Tommy, when you have left after breakfast our wonderful love story is history and I'm turned into a good faithful loving wife who does everything, I mean everything, to win her husband's love back again. But why think about that now? I'm still only yours until then. Be a good boy and don't waste a single minute of our good time." I could not hear his reply but obviously he wasn't able to give her any further without resting a few hours and after a while they were both asleep. I pushed a button on my cell phone. My friend Dan woke up after a few signals and I told him, "I've got bingo. Are you ready for some action?" He promised to be there within 15 minutes. I could have taken care of a Tommy in my bed by myself. The main reason I wanted my friend to be present was that he would be able to testify that I didn't use any violence against neither Tommy nor Lisette. If I had gone in there alone, I'm sure her mother would have gotten some lawyer to invent a nasty story and sue me for rudeness. Another good reason was that Dan owned a very good video camera, and was keen on using it. He was often hired to tape weddings, and I wanted some close-ups, which I did not get from my own camera. Dan arrived as promised. We had a short briefing about how to do it, and then we sneaked into my house. The master bedroom door was closed. I opened it a few centimeters so I could see them both sleeping under a blanket, very close to each other. When Dan had his camera equipment ready, he nodded and I said, "Let's do it." I opened the door, Dan switched on the bright battery-operated halogen light and began taping. I went to the bed, pulled away the blanket without waking them and let Dan have at least 5 seconds on tape before I shouted, "What the hell is this?" They woke up in total surprise. It took several seconds for them to understand what was going on and until their eyes got used to the sharp light. Then Lisette recognized me and started screaming, "No, no, no, no." I took over the camera and told Dan to take the naked Tommy out of my house. Dan took a firm grip of Tommy's hair and dragged him out of the bed and out of the bedroom. There was some noise and shouting out there, but I was in the bedroom and couldn't see what happened. Dan came back after a while, searching for Tommy's keys. He found them in his pants, and went out and threw them out to the driveway. Then we heard him drive away. Naked. In the meantime, Lisette had stopped screaming and begun crying. I think she understood her game was over, because she made no stupid attempts to try to explain what had happened. I told her, "You have terminated our marriage. Get dressed and get out of my house. You don't have the car any longer, so Dan will call a taxi for you. There will be new locks on the doors tomorrow. I'll pack your belongings in cardboard boxes and you can pick them up tomorrow afternoon." She began shouting at me, "You can't do that. You have no right to do such nasty things to your wife. I will never accept that." I don't give cat shit for what you do or don't accept. Please read our premarital settlement. You have a copy of it in your private bank safe. You're out of this house. Please don't do this to me. Please calm down and let us talk. Of course we can talk tomorrow. Be here at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon to pick up your things and dividing everything we own together. Come alone, remember that your parents are not permitted to put their crappy feet on my property. The taxi arrived and had to wait 10 minutes for her before she was ready to go. Dan went home to sleep and I phoned Lottie and told her that I had found Lizette and a man by the name of Tommy naked in the marital bed, which meant that my marriage was over, but I wanted to stay in the house until I had changed the locks. I already had the new locks stored in my king cab. Once again I had won a battle but could only feel sadness for the crashed marriage and for how it ended. I couldn't sleep, so I went to the garage and took the video cassette, put it in the video, rewound it, and pushed the button. It began with Lisette, dressed to kill in a black top, short black skirt, her hair well done, giggling and leading Tommy into our bedroom. She was sexier than I had seen her in years, and it was obvious that it was a great evening for her. In the bedroom she could not resist bragging about how much we had paid for our new marital bed, and told him to be careful and don't make a mess in it. He silenced her with a long deep intensive kiss and took off her top and a black-laced bra I had never seen before. He kissed her before she went down on her knees and unbelted his trousers. To my great surprise she was wearing sexy black stay-up stockings instead of pantyhose. When I had suggested her to wear something like that, she had accused me of being a pervert for making her such shameful suggestions. Obviously, Tommy was getting better favors from her than I ever had. Later none of them said a word for a long time until she said, "We have to shower." And he replied, "Together." Then the screen was empty for a long time until it showed what I had already seen during the night and thereafter when Dan and I got into the room and their awakening. I was still too upset to sleep so I began removing Lizette's clothes from the wardrobes and drawers and store them in the living room. At 9 o'clock in the morning Lottie and the kids came to my house with breakfast in a basket. When I searched Tommy's wallet I found a phone number to his wife, called her and told her that I had found Tommy and my wife naked in my bed and had videotape. She got totally mad but asked me to send pictures to her email, which I promised to do, and did after I had edited a copy of the video to show Lizette if she had any objections to my conditions. I changed locks, packed Lizette's belongings in good order and wrote the contents on the outside of every box. I felt no need for revenge by soiling or destroying anything of hers. Then I took my chainsaw and cut our almost new and very expensive marital bed to small pieces, which I then threw in a pile by the driveway. Lottie and the kids had even brought me a lunch, which gave me a break from the job. Then, at 4 o'clock, a pale Lizette arrived alone in the printing company's old Ford Transit. She stared for a long time at the pile, which had been our expensive bed, before she came in. I had coffee ready in the living room and asked her to sit down. She accepted, sat down and began sobbing and gave me a long litany about how much she still loved me, and how sorry she was that she had done a terrible mistake and would never do that again if I could only forgive her. She promised to work less at the printing company, spend all weekends with her family, never go to a party or dinner at her mother's place without me, and she wanted us to have one more child. I replied her, 3 weeks ago you could saved our marriage with those promises, but today, after what you have done since then, it is too late. I'm sorry Lizette, but there is no future for us any longer. She began her litany again. I let her go on, and when she had finished I asked her, "You must have regarded me as a complete idiot if you thought I swallowed your lies about that Tommy, a 30-year-old who spent his weekends as company to such a disgusting old bee as your mother. Even if I had been thinking with my ass instead of my head, I ought to have understood that there was a much younger and prettier that wanted to be seduced by him." She didn't say anything and I continued. "You are a very handsome woman Lizette, so I can't blame him. But I blame you for being such a